to start with laughter. Laughter is certainly good for well-being, isn't it? So welcome everyone to this last session of the day. I know that if we've been here all day, we might be feeling tired, but we're so lucky to have Tammy Gregersen here with us today, full of energy because it's much earlier in the day where she's at. She's joining us from the United Arab Emirates, and she's a professor of TESOL at the American University there. And you have been to many places. You studied in the US and Chile, now you're in the UAE, and your writing has also taken you to many places and many topics. I'm most familiar with your work in the area of psychology, and this presentation is definitely related. And yeah, you've got some books there. Yes, a new one maybe. Yeah, the newest.
Brand new, hot off the press. Language learning psychology. Yep.
All right, good. A little self-promotion is always fun.
Yep, there's a shameless plug.
Great. Yeah, and well, this is an important topic. We all need balance in our lives. We all need well-being. So Tammy, when I asked her if there was anything I should say about her, she said, I'm a teacher at heart, but I want to say also that she's a teacher with heart. I hope that everyone enjoys.
That is so nice. Wow. That is so nice. Thank you so much, Jocelyn. And what I mean, at this point, the first thing that I really have to do is I have to give a huge shout out to all the teachers out there, because you know what? 2.5 years of COVID, and you guys rock. You were the frontline workers through this whole thing. And you know what? I'm hoping that we're in recovery, that we're on the downside of this, but even if we're not, you know what, guys, you have been amazing. And you know, I've never been more proud to be a teacher. Really, I never have been more proud to be a teacher. And I just want to thank you for everything all of you have been doing for the well-being of your learners. And that's why it's a privilege for me to talk about your well-being today. That's the topic, is taking a look at teacher well-being. For me, because I'm a teacher educator, my learners are teachers. And so I get to be teacher-centered even, I'm learner-centered even when I'm talking to teachers. So here we go. I want to start out by saying, first of all, that well-being is not a simple idea. It's very complex, it's multidimensional, it's dynamic, it's constantly changing. It brings in parts of our minds, our motivations, our emotions, our bodies. And so what I want to do today is take a look at a few of those different dimensions and talk about the dimension, and then some kind of, I'm going to give kind of an activities-based kind of thing, because you know what? In the end, because I am a teacher, I'm a very practical lady. And so let's get at it. Here we go. What's well-being? It is the presence of positive emotion, a lack of negative emotion, and a sense of overall life satisfaction. I want you to notice something, not that beautiful woman there on the beach, but I want you to notice that it says a lack of negative emotion. It doesn't say the eradication of negative emotion. Okay, because we're going to talk about that in a minute, because negative emotion is necessary not only for our evolutionary well-being, but also so that we don't know what positive emotion is unless we experience negative emotion, right? And negative emotion also spurs us to action, right? I mean, when we were, frontiers in the wild west, and we were out in the middle of our woods and we saw a bear, fear is usually an adverse emotion, but fear makes us run. Fear's a good thing. Jealousy, you feel jealousy in a relationship. Well, you know what? Maybe you should spur yourself to action and take a second look at how much you're committed to that relationship. Just saying. Okay. So now, the guy who's most known in well-being research is a guy named Seligman. He was the APA, the American Psychological Association president, starting in the year 2000, 2001, somewhere around there. And he was really the man who brought, the researcher who brought all of the ideas of well-being and positive psychology to the forefront of the psychology agenda. Until that moment, psychology had mostly been devoted to things of dysfunction, right? Neurosis, psychosis, abnormal psychology, as a matter of fact. So along came Seligman, And he started this movement towards, let's look at what makes human beings thrive, what makes us flourish. It doesn't mean we don't need to be taking care of people who have needs, psychological needs and mental illnesses, but it does mean that not all of us are in that basket, right? So let's take a look at what the framework suggests. Positive emotion is necessary. Like I said, it's a balance of the positive with the negative. They talk about a 3-to-1 ratio. Don't quote me on that. I mean, there's been the jury, Barbara Fredrickson and her et al. Got into a lot of trouble for that ratio that they put out there. But what they suggest is that we need to have, for every negative emotion, 3 positives. So they're saying that if 3/4 of your life is positive, it'll give you the resiliency to be able to withstand that 1/4 negative. Engagement. We know by our friend Csikszentmihalyi, the flow guy, that the best kind of engagement, the deepest kind of engagement is flow. We love that idea if our students can enter into flow. But the idea here is that we need in our lives to feel engaged with something. We need to feel that we're connected to it, that we're finding it's going to be coming up, some meaning and purpose. Relationships. Every single positive psychologist is going to tell you that people matter. And if you look at a lot of the studies on longevity, on how long people live, the longevity studies are going to say that people who have a good social network and healthy marriages actually live longer than other people. I mentioned meaning. Our life has to have meaning and purpose, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that when I talk about happiness studies. But I think that meaning and purpose is often one of the reasons we become teachers in the first place. Of course, we didn't do this for the money. Maybe, yeah. So there's got to be another reason, guys. There's got to be another reason. And I think that a lot of us are propelled by feeling that when we walk into the classroom, we're making a difference, right? Achievement. You know what, for as much as effort that we put into something, and we can put up with failure, we must have a sense of achievement, of accomplishment in order to feel that well-being. Now it says plus health, because health was never the part of the PERMA model at the beginning. Health was added a decade later. But what happened was that the researchers realized that, you know what, without health added to the mix of all of the other ideas of PERMA, it wasn't going to work. So health had to be added, and it was actually, added as a very foundational part of well-being. Okay, so what's going on with the idea of happiness? You know what, that's one of the problems that positive psychologists have, is that a lot of detractors call it happyology, and that we're slapping smiley faces on adversity, and that's not what people are trying to do. What people are trying to do is just add a little bit of balance to the research agenda to make sure that well-being is part of what we look at. And so when researchers are looking at what is happiness and what is well-being, they look at it at least in two different sections. There's other researchers that look at it in more than this, but I wanted to bring up the whole idea of hedonic well-being or hedonic happiness. And that's that whole idea of feeling good, of having pleasure, of enjoying life, going out for dinner and enjoying friends, and, having a wonderful time with people. Right. But then there's this idea of eudaimonic well-being and happiness. And that's like self-realization. If you look at Maslow, it's actualizing potential, functioning well. And it's that whole idea of finding meaning and purpose. It doesn't have to necessarily mean that, oh, this is so much fun. That's not the idea. The other one is so much fun, right? But this one is, I feel really satisfied, right? So for a complete idea of wellness, both of these are necessary. Now, I said that we were going to take a look at different kinds of dimensions of who we are. And what I want to do first is look at us and our minds and who we are. We're going to look at the mental well-being and habits of thinking. The thing is that sometimes we don't find our work-life balance. And it's a huge problem for teachers because we don't create boundaries, right? A lot of times, we're bringing we do our planning at home. We eat our lunch at school. We do all of these things and we don't make physical boundaries. We don't make time boundaries. We don't make psychological boundaries. And we're not just teachers. We're also husbands and wives, sons and daughters. We're friends. And so we try to juggle all of these roles. We're actually cat owners. And I don't know where he is right now, but he has this habit of crossing the screen as I'm speaking. So if he does make an entrance. So anyway, so we have all of these dimensions of ourselves. And what happens is these multiple selves are often in conflict, right? There was a book about love languages. It was anecdotal, but it was a bestseller. And my daughters asked me to read it, and I did. And it was the way that love languages, what we anecdotally, it was pleasant for me because it resonated with me. It's how we need to show love to others and what others need from us. So there were things like gift giving or physical touch or time, or there were like 5 or 6 of them. And so one time, because I know what language I use acts of service. I serve. My kids, from the time they were born, got breakfast in bed, and they are 30. My oldest is 30 years old. And when he comes to my house or I go to his house, he still gets breakfast in bed. I serve others, and it's just my love language. But what happens is I asked my kids several years ago when they were teenagers, well, what do you need from me? And they said, Mom, we need your time. And that was the one thing I didn't have. And so what we need and what we think others need is part of who our multiple selves are. So we juggle these multiple identities, and we've got to find a way to make them all jive in order to find that work-life balance. And I think we have to be realistic about it, but more than that, we have to be aware that we're juggling them. And we have to place priority orders to those identities that we have. Now, part of this is that we have what are called signature strengths. I have to say that of all of the interventions that psychologists are talking about, signature strengths is my absolute favorite. And if you look at some of my research, my most recent research, I've integrated this idea more than any other idea because it resonates so strongly with me. And my findings have been so robust that it's just been evidence after evidence for me that this is really something that works. What happened was that Seligman, along with Csikszentmihalyi and Park and Peterson, they went out and they went across the world and they surveyed more than 100 different cultures. And they discovered what they said were 24 virtues that cultures from across the world all value. Now, of course, different cultures are going to value them in different priority orders or with different strength, right? I mean, some are going to value humor more than they would honesty, or they're going to value spirituality more than they would self-regulation, right? But all I'm saying is that there were 24 that they found, and they were able to divide these into 6 categories. And then they created what they called the VIA, V as in vacuum cleaner, VIA, virtues in action. And if you go to VIA.org, they have there a survey, a free survey where you can go answer the questions, and they will immediately spit out for you what your strengths are in priority order from 1 to 24. Anyone who knows me can easily guess my number 1. I'm zest. Anyone who knows me also knows my worst one, and it's prudence. So that's my life. So what happens is that what the psychologists say is ask your learners, ask people around you, ask the people who you are trying to have interventions with, to use their signature strengths in new ways. Now, why would we want to do this? Because they've discovered, and this here on this slide is a list of the benefits of working from a strengths-based approach in the classroom, in the workplace, whatever institutional kind of place you're working. So when you're working from a position of strengths, you feel a sense of ownership and authenticity. You feel like you own this, that this is the authentic me. I feel really good here. I'm in my zone, right? You're intrinsically motivated to use your strength. You know you're good at it, so I intrinsically want to show that. I want to tap into it. It's a rapid learning curve. When it's something that I'm good at and it's something new to me, it's something that naturally is a natural no-brainer for me. So I feel like it doesn't take me a long time to learn new things. I feel invigorated rather than exhausted. So if I can take a strength of humor, for example, that's high on my list. If I can use humor, I'm invigorated when I'm using that rather than being exhausted, right? When I go to class, my classroom management strategy has always been and will always be the use of humor, right? I use humor to keep control of my classroom. I never feel exhausted when I have to correct learners using humor, right? So also, you get this feeling using your strengths of, oh yeah, well, try and stop me, right? You've got this feeling of inevitability. You get a feeling of being excited. I'm using my strength. I'm feeling really excited, especially at first when this is a new thing. You feel a sense of yearning to act in accordance with it, right? You want to create projects that go around what you know you're good at. And finally, you feel like you want to seek out continuous ways of new ways that you can use these. Now, I've used these signature strengths in teacher preparation classes where I've had them use their signature strength in their practicums. I've used signature strengths to match mentors with mentees so that my mentors and my mentees had the similar signature strengths, and they talked about it and they gave each other ideas on how to use them in the classroom. So cool. That's actually published. You can find it online. I used the idea of signature strengths in a first-year composition course where I asked my English language learners to take the VIA survey and use their signature strengths in their writing. And it was a phenomenal experience. Now I'm asking you as teachers to seek out in seeking out your own well-being, to figure out what are your strengths and find out ways of using them in your daily lives. Next, the power of yet. A growth mindset, everybody, we've heard about it. We know about mindsets. Carol Dweck, she's the guru of everything of mindsets. A growth mindset means that you have a belief that you can get better at this. A fixed mindset is the belief that that's a genetically deep, they're genetically predisposed to that. I can't do it. They're just better at it than I am. I've got no aptitude at that. No, it's fixed, right? So what we need in our own minds is this idea that we can do it, right? So for example, I look at I just turned 59 years old 3 days ago. That means that I am a digital immigrant. My students are digital natives, okay? When I look at the way that they pick up on technology, I always say, I can't do that. But then Carol Dweck says, just put yet at the end of that statement. I can't do that yet. So yet is a powerful word. So when you catch yourself saying, I can't do that, remember the word yet, because that's going to bring you from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, right? And even when we're looking at our own learners, a lot of us come, I hate knowing what the students got in the previous class in terms of their grade, because then I get a preconceived idea and they've got this self-fulfilling prophecy notion, right? And so instead of I don't want to know. I want everybody to come with a clean slate because I want to be able to say, they just don't know it yet, okay? Let's take a look at focusing our attention and mindfulness. Now, you might be surprised at the fact that at my next two slides. First of all, I'm going to say, I am not going to congratulate you if you think you're a good multitasker. Because you know what? Research suggests that multitasking is not cognitively efficient. When you're going back and forth between tasks, you're actually losing cognitive energy between the two things. You're not giving the attention that you need to be giving. There are 4 types of attention, actually. Sustained, which is the good thing. That means you're engaged and you've got everything else outside. Selective, right? You've got a lot of things going on, but you're focusing on one, but those other things are still out there. You've got alternating, when you're boom, 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 boom from one to the other. And then you've got divided. You're not really looking at anything. You're just kind of looking all over the place, right? So multitasking isn't, well, if you want to congratulate yourself on multitasking, well, then you go ahead. But you know what? Maybe I should be saying yet. But no, for real, the research on multitasking is saying, you know what? No, you really do need to focalize your attention. Now, one of the things that people say is, you know what, they talk all the time about this mindfulness stuff. What does that really mean? I tried to do yoga once with my daughter. She's an internationally licensed yogi, and she's very, very good at it. But I can't do yoga yet. But when I talk to people about mindfulness and how I discover mindfulness, what it means for me is I like to go through this exercise of 5 of the 5 senses. And it takes just a 30 seconds for each of the 5 senses. And what this is take one of your senses and just focus on one thing. For example, the sense of taste. Close your eyes, shut your ears, and put in something sweet or salty, and just think about how that tastes. Then take something, you know what, my cat has this blanket, you know what, and I haven't felt it for a long time. Just concentrate on what does that feel like? Close your eyes right now. Close your eyes and think about what are all the sounds right now that you're closing out. My clock is ticking. My husband is messing around with papers across the table. I'm ignoring all of those things. But when I just concentrate on that one sense, all of those things that I've been ignoring suddenly I become mindful of them. So just take one sense and concentrate in that one sense for just 30 seconds and notice how all the other things that you've been ignoring are right there, right? That's mindfulness. Okay, now this is the second thing that I think you'll be surprised, especially because I just took you to task on thinking you're cool when you multitask. Because right now I'm going to say, you know what? I give you permission to let your minds wander and let them wander and wander. Why? Because there are benefits to mind wandering. Research suggests that you increase your creativity and your problem solving, as well as you enhance your mood. Now, there's a caveat. Imagine, it's got to be at the right time and place. It shouldn't be in my class, okay? Mind wandering isn't bad. It just depends on when it wanders and where it wanders to, okay? Okay. With time and space, it's a good thing. You know what? Why? Because your subconscious needs the time to process everything that you have overtly been thinking about consciously. I don't know about you guys, but I am blessed with this ability of, if I go to sleep thinking of a problem, I wake up and it's solved. I wrote my PhD thesis that way. I would go to bed with a specific idea in my mind, and I didn't know how to do it or which direction I was going to take. And I would wake up in the morning and it would be all aligned in my head. It's the craziest thing. I do the same thing now if I'm writing a paper. And it's like, I've got all of these areas. I don't know how to start my introduction. And so I lay in bed, and then at 3 o'clock in the morning, I might wake up, I turn my light on, and there's a pad of paper and a pencil right next door, because you know why? Letting my mind be free and letting it going to where it needed to go unconsciously solves it. Now that works for me. Now, mind wandering isn't a bad thing. I mean, I think you have to just kind of work with it a little bit. But anyway, research says that you can let it go to some creative places. Let's take a look at the motivational you. Okay. Sometimes, everybody, we need to remember our initial reasons for becoming a teacher. Okay. The motivations that we have are dynamic. They're from day to day. They go over the course of years. I mean, we can have a really good day. We can have a really bad day. One day we can, be at the end of the day and say, what the heck did I become a teacher for? But there are other times when it's like you come back out of a class and you're so high, it's kind of like you've got this energy and this enthusiasm. It's like, this is so good. Remember those first years when we were teachers? I mean, they were hard years. They were tough years. We were novices. But what was the reason that we initially became teachers? And sometimes when we're at those low moments, if we bring ourselves back to why we originally became teachers, that might help. I mean, some of us, was it social status? I mean, some of you are living in Asia. I mean, from what I understand, teachers in Asia are very well respected. I read in a book, I read it in Peterson, Christopher Peterson's book, and this is in Korea. I don't know if it's true, so you guys could tell me. But I read that in Korea, when a president is elected, that on the day of his inauguration, he goes to visit his favorite teacher and thanks her. I don't know. I think that that's pretty cool if it is true. And I think that says something about the way that teachers are valued. So there's a certain value that might be, I mean, if that's the credibility and the respect that the profession is getting in your culture, what an amazing profession that you've joined. Maybe you have a desire to serve, or maybe you had a sense of purpose and that's what you wanted to do. I have to say that my original reason for becoming a teacher was because I wanted to travel. And I knew that any country in the world that had diplomatic relations with the United States had a school that I could teach at. So, in fact, that was really my initial motivation. And so I've kind of kept that motivation alive. So anyway, we've had these initial reasons, right? So when we're at those low points, go back to that initial reason, remind ourselves why. We need to remind ourselves of the initial motivation and align our current perspectives. So we need to experience those benefits. And of course, to remember that teaching is really ideally suited to finding meaning and purpose, because who else? I mean, a doctor can't be a doctor without us. A lawyer can't be a lawyer without us. Nobody can be anything without first going through us. And so imagine the power of the teaching profession. We change the future. And so don't let anyone tell you that what we're doing doesn't have meaning and purpose, because it really does. And when you're down and out and you're saying, oh God, what did I get myself into? Remember, no one else has the power that we do. Now, here's the thing that I want you to think about in terms of an activity for those dips in motivation. I'm going to talk to you about job crafting. And job crafting is this ability that we all have to make modifications in what we do in order to align it more with what we want out of our profession and out of our lives. The first one is task crafting. Now, I also want to say a caveat that some of us are in a privileged position to have more autonomy, right? Some of us have less autonomy, and only you know how much agency you're given in order to make decisions like the ones I'm going to be asking you to think about, right? So, you know what? Good luck to all of you who have a lot of autonomy, and I'm sorry to those of you who don't have so much, but see what we can do. Take what we've got, even if it's just a little wiggle room, right? So task crafting, what is it? This is the ability to alter the responsibilities that were prescribed. Can we add or drop a task that we have? Can we alter the nature of a task that we have? Can we completely change it, right? Can we change the time or energy or attention, the way that that's kind of prioritized in our day? For example, if you're a task savvy teacher, how maybe you can craft your job by knowing that you can work with an IT person on IT issues, on technical issues, right? What happens with relational crafting? The second one. This is changing how, when, and with whom you interact at school and at home and in the classroom. So for example, I love all of my colleagues. I love all of them except for one. And that one colleague, I have the autonomy to not be on committees that she's on. And I refuse because she is so toxic. And I know that it's not my fault. So what do? I do relational crafting. I refuse to sit on any committees where I know that she's going to be there, because I go home and I want to sob because it's so toxic. So what's a more positive example? A teacher, could you form if you're a K-12 person, could you form a relationship with a volunteer parent to maybe read to the learners in K-6, right? Is there a way that you could create a relationship with a different colleague who you might want to co-opt or co-teach a class? The third one is cognitive crafting, and that's here, it's in your headspace. It's changing the way we perceive something. So for example, I know, and God bless you all, I know that we are overwhelmed with the amount of testing that we are obligated to do, right? We are, and I feel sometimes we spend more time preparing our learners to take standardized tests than we actually do instructing in language. But how about this? How about if I know that my learner has to take that standardized test, instead of being annoyed and frustrated with this kind of overwhelmed feeling of having to prepare them for tests, how about if I said, you know what? These tests are essential for their future and for getting into good programs. So you know what? I'm not going to think about this as preparing them for a test. I'm going to reassign meaning in my head and say, I'm preparing them for their future. I'm preparing them better to get what they want with what they need to do to get there. I don't know if it's going to work, but give it a try. Okay, let's take a look at our emotional well-being. Okay, so we've gone through a little bit of our mental well-being, our motivational well-being. Let's take a look at this other dimension, which is emotion. Okay. SocioEmotional competences. We know that these are now part of the 21st century skills. And we know that across the world, teachers are being asked to interweave this ability or interweave in our classes the ability of students to connect better with people and their own emotions. So, according to Goleman, 1998, the cornerstone of socio-emotional competence is self-awareness. And I'm talking to you as teachers now, everybody. I'm talking about your well-being. So what is the first part of our socio-emotional competence as teachers? Self-awareness. Number one, we need to recognize the experience of an emotion. You know what? Sometimes we experience an emotion and we've got this physiological response to something, but we don't name it, you know? So the second part is not only recognizing that we're experiencing it, but actually naming it. You know what? That growling, that kind of acid in my stomach, that's annoyance. Uh-oh, that's annoyance. Okay, so number three, I have to be aware of its effect and its function. What is that annoyance triggering in terms of my actions? What am I doing about that, right? So what I need to know, experiencing it, I need to name it, and I need to know its effect, okay? That's the first part of socio-emotional competence. So now, what do we need to do? We one of the activities that I want you to think about is when you focus on the joys. I mentioned that there's got to be this in well-being. The idea is to find a balance between the positive and the negative. Well, I'm going to talk to you right now about altering that ratio so that we can experience more positivity. Now, again, just like I told you about don't hold me accountable to the 3-to-1 ratio because it's kind of iffy. The numbers are iffy. I think that the fact that more positivity as opposed to less negativity is a good thing. Yeah, but don't hold me to the numbers. I'm going to do the same thing here with the happiness. Happiness researchers go with kind of a 50-50 kind of idea. Liberowski, Sheldon, and Schade in 2005, they talked about the idea that about 50% of our set place, our set point, is genetically predefined. So we are born happy, depressed, joyful. We're born in a certain, we have a predisposed set point. So I can tell you for sure, I have 3 kids. My firstborn, in Spanish, he was gruñón. He was born in Chile, and he's gruñón. In English, we call it grumpy. He was born grumpy. He's 30 years old now, and he is still grumpy. If he ever sees this webinar, he will agree. He's a grump. My 3rd child, who's now 22, she flew out of my cervix laughing and smiling and already having a blast. She's 22 years old, and that kid's resiliency is like off the charts. Her happiness set point is about where mine is, right? So now we all have this set base. Okay, now I said that's 50%, right? So what about the other 50%? There's about 25% that are uncontrollable forces that act upon us. You know what? COVID was not our fault, right? COVID happened upon us. There was nothing we could do about it, but we had to deal with it, okay? So that's 25%, right? Things that happen to us. The other 25% is what we're going to talk about, because it's that other 25% over which we have some control, okay? So now, we all have a baseline of which we tend to kind of live. The question is, when we have adversity, how far does it dip and how long does it take to bring it back up? Divorce, job loss, death, those are major adverse life events that are obviously going to set us back and bring that set point pretty low. The question is, how low and how quickly can we get back? We can have, hey, I nailed the job that I've always wanted. Hey, my firstborn child is so healthy, right? And we get these high points and we're high. The question is, how high do we go and how long can we stay that way, right? So now, according to the researchers who look at this, we can consciously and actively enhance our overall levels of well-being. We've got that kind of wiggle room. Okay, let's take a look at what we can do. What are some of these actions and activities? Number 1, researchers take a look at acts of kindness and generosity, random acts of kindness and generosity. I did a research study a couple of years ago at the University of Northern Iowa, where I was working with TESOL pre-service teachers and international students learning English as an academic language. And we preceded every tutorial session with a different intervention. And one of them was doing an act of kindness. So what my tutors did with their tutee was they wrote thank you notes and delivered them to the carts of the cleaners, of the janitors of the buildings of the university, and put a piece of chocolate along with the note, thanking them for how beautiful the buildings looked and thanking them for their hard effort and their work. And when they got back, we were measuring their affect. And after that, after they did that act of kindness, their well-being shot right up. And then when we measured it post session of the tutorial, after they had worked on the language, it was still as high as right after they had done it. And so there was some just amazing thing happened with random acts of kindness. When Donald Trump called this a ban on Muslims in the United States, I was so devastated. I just couldn't believe that America would do that. It was so disheartening for me. And so the only thing that I could do was to turn off the news for a month. And I made a promise to myself that every hijabi woman that I saw, I would go up to her and thank her for coming to my country and for making my country more diverse. And it made me have a high. I felt so much better. And over the space of that month, I must have thanked 30, 35 women, because I couldn't tell who was Arab men. But when they were Muslim, they would wear their hijab, and they may have been American Muslims, but sure, they added religious diversity to my population, right? So it helped me. So it was I felt happier about doing that. Next, researchers say if you've got a little bit of extra money, spend it on experience and not things. The happiness kickback from buying a new pair of shoes wears off a lot more quickly than taking a friend out for lunch, because the ability to savor that experience, look back at that experience, lasts a lot longer than your new shoes. Your new shoes are fun for the first 5 minutes you put them on, right? And then after that, they're old. Create micro moments of positivity. I have one every single morning. I go to the kitchen. I'm the only one up in the house. I'm the first one up. I turn on Andrea Bocelli. He sings only to me, and I have my first cup of coffee. It's my micro moment of positivity. It actually gets me out of bed in the morning, because I lay in bed knowing, oh, I've got to get up. And then I think, oh, Andrea's waiting for me in the kitchen, and so is my coffee. That micro moment of positivity. Next, set time aside to watch your favorite TV show or film. Now, don't use this as procrastination. Now, there's two different things here. When you're using this as a means of procrastinating on something you should be doing, forget it. But when you're creating a moment for yourself to create work-life balance, this is a wonderful thing to do. Go for a walk, do yoga, do aerobics, hug your dog. And then last but not least, physical activity. Physical activity has a double whammy, right? You get the endorphin rush, plus you get the dopamine rush. So you know what, physical activity, and we're going to talk a little bit more about it in a few minutes. How much time do I have left, Jocelyn?
About 7 minutes or so.
Oh gosh, okay, thank you. Okay, so negativity bias. We all do it, everybody. Now we're still in the mental part of it, right? We need to be dealing with negativity bias. We all have this, and it's a human habit. It's not just teachers. We have this habit of remembering the negative rather than the positive. Think to the last time that you had teaching evaluations and you had 25 of your students say that you were amazing, and one student said you were mediocre. You spent the next week thinking about why you were mediocre and not the 24 reasons you were fantastic. Okay, I know it because I do it too. Okay, so now we typically do remember more adverse things than we do positive things. So what do we need to do? I hope that this is made available, everybody, this PowerPoint, because these are the questions you need to ask yourself when you start that negativity bias. These are questions that are going to put that negativity bias in perspective, okay? The veracity of what that bias actually is, okay? I don't have time to go through them right now, but these are self-questions for you when you're experiencing that negativity bias. Emotional labor. We're teachers. We decided to go into a service career. We're in this because we love people, because we care for people. And what is emotional labor? Emotional labor is knowing that because we have expectations in our profession to suppress certain emotions, that sometimes that suppression becomes overwhelming. We're teachers, we don't show anger, we don't show frustration, we don't show annoyance. So what do? We suppress all of that in the name of being good to our students and good professionals, right? That's what emotional labor is. It's a natural part of our jobs. Service professions have emotional labor like on steroids. So what we need to do is recognize when that emotional labor becomes harmful, when we're suppressing those authentic emotions, right? And we have this disparity between what we're actually feeling and what we're actually showing. So what do we do with stressful emotional labor? It's very similar to what we do with socio-emotional competence. We distinguish it and we label it. It's kind of like the first two steps of socio-emotional competence. We have to be aware of it and we have to name it. We have to observe it. We have to say, okay, this is what I'm feeling. And this is okay that I'm feeling it. It's a natural way to feel it. I feel it now. I have to let it go. It's not bad to feel it. You do feel it, right? It's okay to not be okay, right? Now liberate it. The next thing to do, forecast it and recognize when it might come up again. Because you know what? These annoyances, these reasons that we have to suppress are oftentimes, they keep coming. And it's the same things that trigger them. The triggers are the same. So you can forecast them and recognize when they're coming. So you know what? When you identify the patterns and you know it's coming, okay, I got this. I got this yesterday. I can get through it again. Okay? That's emotional labor, guys. We all do it and we can all live through it. Practicing self-compassion. All I want to do right now is what we need to do is treat ourselves with the same kindness, caring, and compassion that we would show a good friend or even a stranger for that matter. What we need to do is pretend that we are our own best friend. We need to be kinder. We need to stop the good, bad labels. We need to be self-accepting, tolerance of our own humanness, and accept the fact that we're imperfect. Now, this self-compassion journaling, what this is F, and she says, write down anything that caused you a negative reaction or to judge you. Then take a look at what you wrote. Consider how you would respond to that if it were your best friend who was reading that. And then respond to yourself as your own best friend. Now, the physical body, what I wanted to do was have you distinction between two kinds of stress. Not all stress is bad. Eustress is actually a motivator towards taking action. Distress is when it has you over the top, okay? So what you need to do is get rid of the distress and capitalize on the eustress. Performance is improved up to a particular point, and only you can define that point, right? And so there's a certain degree of stress that's actually good, but you get to a tipping point, and that is where your performance deteriorates. So you need to be able to discover that tipping point and know your sources. Are they the environmental ones, the social ones, the psychological ones, or the physiological ones? As teachers, you can see all kinds of sources of stress. When do you get to your tipping point, right? Now, I don't have time to show you this, but this is, you might have seen this before. It's called the Einstein, oops, I've got it up here. Oh, I forgot the name of it. Look it up online. It's coming. You're going to be able, it's one of these career wheels where you color in what are your degrees of satisfaction in each of these areas. And you're going to be able to see on this wheel where your satisfaction lies. Okay. Now, in terms of making time management, Parkinson's law says that the amount of work that you have is going to shrink or expand according to the time you give it. If you've got a stack of papers to grade and you say, I've got all weekend to do it, all weekend to do it. If you say I have 2 hours to do it, you'll get it done in 2 hours. It's Parkinson's law. Give yourself a solid timeline and get it done and realize that it's accomplished. That's good enough. Because you know what? You're a human being with human needs and you've got to have a work-life balance. Now, here's the Eisenhower matrix. This is where you weigh urgent with importance. You need to say two things. Is what I need to do important or urgent? Is it not important or not urgent? And you're going to have these quadrants. Based on these quadrants, you make a decision on how to prioritize your tasks. Okay? Obviously, number one is that you're going to do that one. Number 4 is like, just take it off your list. And then with numbers 2 and 3, where you make decisions, right? Because number 1, you got to do it right away. Number 4, forget it. Number 2 and 3, start prioritizing. Now, to fight procrastination, the Pomodoro Technique, you do this in spurts. You set 20 minutes, you work for 20 minutes, give yourself a break. I usually go a little longer. I like 40 minutes and then I have a cup of tea, 40 minutes, and then I go out and pet the cat, 40 minutes, and then I award myself, okay? Sometimes I do it by the week. Sometimes I say, if I get my to-do list of the week done, I'll take Friday afternoon off. Pomodoro Technique, okay? That's essentially what that is. Now, then you've got, this is the last slide, respecting the health triangle. You need to be able to understand that all of your well-being, no matter what, remember the H that Seligman put on his PERMA model? That H is this: sleep, exercise, and diet. If you don't have this kind of physical health, then you can just forget everything that I just said over the last 35 minutes, okay? So give this time, okay? Thanks for listening. Be well. Okay, that's it. That's all I've got. Woohoo!
Wow, thank you, Tammy. I'm feeling so energized after this and just so full of ideas. I mean, you mentioned so many things: juggling, job crafting, wandering creative zones, focusing on signature strengths, and all kinds of very useful activities, as well as, of course, important information from research. I think there might be, I'm not sure if there are any comments in the chat or any questions that people have said. Someone said that they use emotion wheels. Mostly I see thank yous. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
We are at time, but I'm not sure if you are willing to take a few questions or not.
Sure. Sure. My grocery shopping wait.
All right. Someone is asking for your contact information, and you did mention the slides. Maybe I could share them somehow
Please.
afterwards.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Also, my email is Gregersen at AUS, American University of Sharjah, aus.edu. Gregersen, so you can find my name. Gregersen, all one word, at aus.edu. If you don't get my slide on TESOL, then write to me and I'll just attach it and we'll have a go at it. Yeah.
There's so much information to take
right?
in there.
Right. Well, I have to say that all of it is in this book that we will Teacher Wellbeing. Just another shame. Teacher Wellbeing, Oxford University Press. Everything that I cite comes from here.
So I put that in the chat as well.
Oxford will be very happy that I did that.
Yeah, does anyone have any questions? I'm sure people are feeling a little tired at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But
I know how that feels. You know what? And we're try and be a professor in Ramadan and have a 5 p.m. class. It's Ramadan here, and I taught at 5.
Mm. Well, definitely some others are thinking about dinner, but there is one question here. What is your idea about a cross-cultural study on language teacher well-being? One more time, what is your idea about a cross-cultural study on language teacher well-being?
I would, that would be, I would love to do that. I think that there's a little bit out there, a little bit already. Sarah Mercer did a study on teacher well-being during COVID and look at the coping strategies of teachers across the world. And so we did a little bit in that, but it was during COVID. And you know what, I would love to do something that was specifically on well-being. I think we would need to really take a look at some important variables, like defining, like I said, the level, how teaching is perceived in the teachers are paid, how many hours in front of teachers have. We did an ESM study, an experiential sampling method study of teachers from across the world. And what we did was we beeped at them. They agreed to carry a beeper. And for how many weeks? For 3 weeks? No, for 10 days, they would get a beep and they were asked some questions. What are you doing? How are you feeling? Where are you? And then we would ask them on a scale from 1 to 10, how happy are you? And so, and that is an ESM study. So if you Google my name and you go ESM study, you'll find that study. And that was a cross-cultural study on teacher well-being. And we were doing it in the moment. It was, oh, wow, came up stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds super exciting.
It was. Yeah.
All right, and so you have her email if you would like to follow up as well. Yeah. Any more questions? I mean, just a comment from me, I'm very much interested in peace and language education and peace linguistics, and you have done some publications on that. And of course, well-being is very central as well to
right?
that.
Right? Yes. And I'm working, well, Jocelyn, right now I'm working on a special issue in multicultural development where we're looking at marginalized populations. And wow, I mean, it's I'm taking my first stab at an ethnography, an autoethnography that I've never done that before. And wow, if any of you ever want to do some autoethnography is incredible. Whoa. Yeah, I don't know if I want to dig too deep.
Well, I love that you mentioned that too, because there may be some people here who are just starting out in the field, and it just shows that we're always learning, we're always growing.
Right? Right. And you know what? The quirkier the methodology, the research methodology being used, the more I love it. I love methods. This ethnography, I used the critical friend ethnography, and Sarah Mercer was my critical friend. Mm-hmm. And it was experience. She was like my therapist.
You were a good team.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
But Dave, I saw you unmuted yourself. Did you want to say something? No? Okay. All right. Well, Alex noted that she started in 2020. So I guess she said, so that was a fun time. I mean, I assume she meant this presentation. Wonderful. Well then, maybe we could wrap it up, call it a day. The conference will continue tomorrow. Of course, there's a
fun, great
schedule. Yeah, it should be fun. Thank you once again, Tammy, for joining us. It's been really wonderful and very informative.
Bye.
Talk to you soon.